Shalom. We've now begun the book of Exodus, Sefer Shemot, and the exile is upon us. It's a dark time coming. We read in chapter 2, during those many days it happened that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel groaned because of the work, and they cried out. Their outcry because of the work went up to God. God heard their moaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the children of Israel, and God knew. You know, the whole concept of the Galut Mitzrayim, the Egyptian exile, and the Geula, the Yetziat Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt, takes up a lot of space in the Torah. It's a fundamental principle of our lives that we remember every single day. And we know that the Torah doesn't just tell stories of what was in the past. It's not about just recounting history, but rather the purpose of this whole section is to teach us the way of our lives, to teach us about the concept of exile and how to get free. And when you think about it, we realize that we as a nation have spent so much time in exile that it almost seems to be like a part of our very essence. In fact, we've really spent so much more time in exile than we have as a free people. And it's also part of the essence of every individual. And it always will be, until we all merit as a nation and as individual people, till we merit to the final and complete redemption. And so this whole section of the Torah, of what we went through in Egypt and the going out from Egypt, is in itself a whole Torah. It's a whole lesson in all the aspects of Galut, of exile and redemption. And everything that we're learning now in these weeks about the exile in Egypt is to light up a path for us, for the whole nation of Israel and for every individual, to understand the aspect of what it is to be in exile in this world. And what is exile really? It's really all about distance from Hashem. And this verse that we read, it's very, very deep, because it marks the beginning of the redemption. Because during all of those previous 210 years, before the appointed time of the redemption came, the people of Israel did not cry out before God. Here we're reading now at this point that they began to groan because of the avodah, because of the service, the work, and they cried out. And their outcry went up before Hashem, and he remembered. But what about all those years before? Why didn't they cry out? Our sages teach us it's because they were so hopeless. They were so forlorn that they couldn't even cry. They couldn't even begin to pray. And actually, the Holy Zohar teaches us that's the real epitome of what Galut Mitzrayim is all about. Mitzrayim, it means the narrow places. And the Zohar explains that the dibur itself, speech, the aspect of speech, as it was in exile. It was impossible for the Jewish people to even get a word out because they were so destitute spiritually, they were so forlorn, they couldn't even pray, and they couldn't even cry. But now, this verse marks a turning point, because the moan, the sigh of anguish, is the beginning. It's a prayer without words, and it is finally the beginning of the end of exile, because the real exile is not being able to express ourselves. The real exile is that feeling of being separated from Hashem and not being able to get a word out. And we read that their outcry indeed was because of the avodah in Hebrew, because of the work, because of the service of Hashem, because of the distance that they felt in not being able to serve Hashem, avodat Hashem. This is what made them cry. They were actually groaning over their distance, the distance that they felt from God. And then he knew. And the word used by the verse is the same that implies the concept of dveikut, of being together, of clinging together, like Adam and Chava. Because of the groan, which was finally brought forth from the very inner essence of Klal Yisrael, of the Jewish people, now Hashem knew. And this united them in the source, in the heavenly source. And this is the beginning of the end of the exile. And so too, in the life of every individual, when we finally are able to shake ourselves out of our state of being so crestfallen and so spiritually broken, we're finally able to get the word out and finally able to cry out to Hashem. This is the beginning of the redemption itself. And this is our goal, to return to that state of being able to feel, of being able to at least realize how far we are from Hashem. Even if we are in exile, the beginning of the redemption is to be able to recognize how close we would like to be, and to recognize how far we are, and to begin to cry over that. And then Hashem knows, and then the redemption can begin.